make sure this comes through, and then we will start. Is it going? There's always that weird lag time at the beginning. Maybe. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think it's good. There's always like a... Yeah, it's good. There's always like a weird lag at the beginning. There's like a 15 to 20 second delay. So, all right, cool. We are live. Super excited as per every episode. This episode I have Lindie Buatez. Is that correct?
Yes, hello.
So you're on the show. I talk about you all the time. So it's really cool to have you on here, and of course we interact on social media and stuff. But it'll be really really fun to chat. So I highly doubt anyone watching my channel doesn't know who you are, because I think most of my subscribers have come from just the occasional retweet or something from you. But on the off chance, do you want any kind of introduction or anything?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Lindie. I was born in South Africa. Right now, I'm living in Singapore. I actually work as a UI UX designer, not working with languages at all, but my huge passion in life is everything to do with language learning.
Yeah.
So I actually discovered Jonathan through probably just YouTubing something about language learning, and your videos popped up, and that's how we became friends.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I know that you are like, you've always been into learning languages in terms of I know from a young age you said that you learned English. You said that some of your earliest memories were remembering being told that you were proficient in English and stuff. And so what outside of that, because I know, especially coming from places, I know that you're from South Africa, which I know English is a little more prevalent there, but I know that basically everywhere teaches English now. But what got you into the idea of learning multiple languages?
Right. So my dad is a diplomat, so we grew up in a few different countries, and I obviously interacted with people from all over at school all the time. But I always saw language learning as, oh, just another school subject. So I took Urdu, French, and Arabic as compulsory school subjects.
Mhm.
And I thought, it was fun to be able to write in a different language, for instance, or, write my crush's name in Arabic in my notes.
Right.
But I never really took it seriously as thinking this is a means of communicating with someone from a different, completely different culture and language.
Right.
Um, I had a Korean friend in high school in Dubai, and when we moved back to South Africa, my mom saw an ad in the newspaper for free Korean lessons, and she was like, "Oh, do you want to try learn Korean?" I was like, "Oh, that's weird. Okay, whatever." So I started learning Korean with her, and then I was like, "Wow, this is actually really fun." So from there, Korean started branching out into other Asian languages, and I studied more Korean for in my last year of high school, and I actually did study for my final exams. So that goes to show how much of a
Gotcha.
hobby addiction it became.
Right. Did you ever have trouble with the like the just the insanely different grammatical patterns and stuff that Korean or any of the Asian languages really have?
Grammar, not so much. I think more than grammar, I struggled a bit more with pronunciation. So it
Mm.
was a language that I hadn't heard a lot before. I mean, French was something that was always around me at school, but um, Korean, it was pretty hard to reproduce the sounds. I have to sneeze.
No, you're fine.
Oh, I think I'm good.
That's the
Okay.
that's the beauty of live. You never know.
But yeah, it was tricky to learn to pronounce things properly in Korean.
Gotcha. The writing system give you any trouble?
No, that was actually really fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed. That's what actually got me started learning languages with different scripts. I thought it was so fun, and from then on, I was like, I'm gonna try and learn as many different languages that have a different writing system.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm always writing. I prefer writing a lot.
Yeah. No, I enjoy that aspect too, because I can read katakana, hiragana. I can read right at about 350 kanji. I can read Hangul. I can read Cyrillic. I can read the
Nice.
Greek alphabet. I don't speak any of those languages, but
Yeah.
I can read the alphabet. So um, that's definitely a huge thing. I know that right now you're concentrating on Korean to pass like what, the TOPIK test or something, or the...
Yeah. The topic exam, I'm not
Yeah,
sure if it's going to be postponed for a second time because of the virus.
right.
It should be next month. What are we in now? Is this April? Yeah, it should
Yeah,
be next month. Um, I have never taken the exam before, so I'm very nervous. And honestly, I think a lot of language learning exams test you more on your test taking ability than
right,
it actually is on your fluency, let alone your speaking. Not a lot of exams contain a speaking component.
right.
Korean and the Japanese exam don't test your speaking,
Yeah,
which I think is integral to your fluency.
right,
It's really kind of like, are you able to answer this multiple choice question really smartly, really quickly? Which kind of sucks, but that's how they do English exams in Korea. So
right,
I just need to learn how to take a test as
right.
well as obviously up my vocabulary.
Yeah. See, that's what I always think is weird about those tests, because like you could pass that test with, I mean, like you could make a whatever the highest grade is, but like you could pass it flawlessly but not speak the language, like
That is
realistically.
true. That is true. And I hate to call out people because I always say it, but I know of people who have passed the highest level N1 in Japanese and they can barely form a conversation. But that's really because they've been sitting and studying these intense grammar structures, reading the newspaper, and I admire them for that. Like their vocabulary is insane.
Yeah,
But maybe people just have different priorities. Perhaps
yeah,
to that, acquiring vocabulary and being able to read is a lot more important than just talking to.
right. Yeah, I think I think a lot of it's like almost like a complacent. I mean, I'm the world's worst when it comes to that, but like in terms of study, like I think because I know that you do a lot with like book. Your Instagram is always like, here's my book, here's my super awesome notes and my pins. So you get the repetition as to where a lot of people like. I mean, they don't get that. Even if you're doing apps, it's you kind of just go through the habits and the motions of it, but you're not really like I think that any kind of writing down. I started writing down like kanji and stuff recently. I have a notebook where I just do like if I see an interesting kanji and I think it'll be something I need, I'll write it down or something. But I think that repetition helps kind of cement it into your head.
Yeah, it's easy to get to think that writing things in a notebook will actually help a lot. It's really the repetition you get after that, the practice you get after that. And I'm not really one who enjoys reviewing my notes,
Hmm.
as contrary to popular belief. I don't, sit with my notebook all the time.
Right.
But writing it down does help me remember a lot more. Like it's been proven, we've all read the fact like you remember 20% more of what you read, 50% more of what you write, something like that, right?
Right.
But I think a lot of my practice comes from actually hearing the stuff I've written in my notebook being spoken or said in a drama or something.
Right.
I see a lot of people joining. Hello,
Yeah. What's
everybody.
going on, everybody? Caleb Clardy, welcome, welcome. Yo yo. Tokini
I'm just
Andy,
having some bread.
welcome. Go for it. Go for it. Yeah, welcome everybody. Like I said, if you are new to my channel or if you haven't joined a lot of these live streams, feel free to ask questions or make comments or whatever, because I always try to incorporate whatever you all are saying into, because it's what you guys want to hear. So let me know. Yeah, all right.
Choked on my breakfast. Sorry.
Gotcha. No, you're all right. Here we go. Question for both. When you're speaking English and want to say a foreign pronoun word, example,
Oh,
speaking English, want to say katakana, Xin Shao, do you say it? Ah, that's a good. Do you say it anglicized or true to the language?
do
I
you
think
want to answer first?
sure. I actually a lot of times I have this really weird habit, and people who know me in real life probably would notice this after I said it. I have a weird habit if I'm not sure the pronunciation, I'll say it both ways that I think it's pronounced. So
Mm.
like I would say like hiragana, or something of that nature, versus just one or the other.
That is a tricky question for me. So I think with French words, I tend to say them the French way. So
Hmm.
French words that are used in English. But not that anyone's told me they think it's pretentious, but I know that a lot of people do think that it's not cool to, because you're like showing off that you know how to pronounce the
Uh,
word. But this is how the word is meant to be said.
yeah,
But I understand how a lot of words have been incorporated into English vocabulary, and it is used as an English word, regardless of what its background is.
right.
So I try to be cognizant of that, and especially, I think it depends on who I talk to. I'm not going to be that person who's like aperitif, when I'm talking about like food.
Right, right. Yeah.
If my audience or the people I'm talking to doesn't understand that.
Yeah.
Things like katakana, hiragana, I try and say those in a Japanese pronunciation because they're pretty easy to understand what it means.
Right.
But then again, you can think of the opposite, like when you say English words in Japanese. You don't say "watashi wa radio o kikimasu,"
Right.
right? Because that's been incorporated. It's actually a Japanese word right now, radio, right?
Roger.
So
Right.
it depends who I'm talking to and what the language is, and yeah,
Yeah.
I mix.
I can agree with that. I think depending on who you talk to, that's a huge. Like I have a friend that I talk to all the time about my languages, not because they're interested, but we're super good friends and we talk about what we're doing and stuff. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to him, I will not even think about it and just use the anglicized like hiragana, like I'll just because I know that like for one I don't want him to think I am being pretentious, like oh look at me and my superior knowledge like you said or anything like that. So I think that's a good point. Do you think it's possible to master an accent of the language? What I mean is people won't be able to tell you're a foreigner.
Yeah, definitely. I know there are a lot of contrasting thoughts on this.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who have the school of thought that you will never be able to master an accent.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think it's possible. Think of someone who is not a native English speaker and they are like a few years old and they move to America. They're going to grow up speaking with a full-on American accent. If you move to England, you're going to speak with a full-on British accent. It's
Right.
the same thing. If you are exposed to the accent enough, if you practice it enough, I don't see why it's impossible to
Yeah.
sound like a native. And not to, blow my own trumpet or anything, but I have spoken over the phone with a few Korean people, and back when my Korean was at its peak, and people were convinced that I am Korean. Like they just
Right.
did not believe that I'm South African.
Yeah.
I have to say though that I think accents fluctuate a lot. If I spend a lot of time watching Japanese dramas, for instance, my Korean tends to get a Japanese inflection, and the
Mm-hmm.
other way around. When I speak Japanese, people are like, "Oh, you sound Korean when you speak Japanese."
Yeah.
Accents do fluctuate. My English accent has changed over the years. Like 10 years ago, I sounded completely South African. 15 years ago, I sounded way more American than anything. So accents do change. They're
Yeah.
very, very flexible. It's a product of your environment.
Yeah. That's actually an interesting. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go look at like some of your earliest videos and just try to see how like if your accent has changed even since then. Which
You should watch my very first polyglot one, the really cringy one. I have such a South African accent there. It's weird.
well, I mean it makes sense. All right, let's see. So yeah. Well, I didn't answer. So I think that you can. I think that it can take. I mean, it just depends on how much time you put into it. I know there's plenty of people who go above and beyond in terms of trying to acquire that accent, and I think a lot of it also can depend on, like, if I were to try to do it eventually with a Spanish accent from where Spanish is so close to English, I could accomplish that faster than trying to sound native in Korean, Japanese, Mandarin, anything like that, because it is so similar to English.
Interesting, yeah. I also think it depends on how early you started learning the language.
Yeah.
Not to bring up the age argument, like older people have a harder time learning languages, but definitely the time you have accustomed to learning the language. Um, I know of a lot of Korean people who live in South Africa, so people have lived in South Africa for longer than I ever did. And their English is super, super South African. And if you close your eyes, you'd be like, this is a South African person talking to me. You would never guess it's a Korean second language English speaker.
Right.
And that's because they grew up there. So I see someone says that studies show that there will always be some indicators of a non-native accent. Possibly, could be.
Possibly.
It could be if you started learning the language a lot later, if you haven't been learning the language for a long time. But I think if you've grown up with it,
Yeah,
I don't see why not.
I think so too. Like if you start at a super super early age, I know that I watched a video recently from Matt versus Japan. Was it Matt? Well, I know it was Matt versus Japan, but I don't remember if it was a recent video or a. I was watching a video from him recently myself. I don't know if it was recent from him or not, but he talked about how I guess there's studies that show that like after a certain amount of time when you're a kid, your brain shuts out kind of this ability to make other sounds, and it basically in order to concentrate on what sounds it's heard to get you to your language. But you I guess, I mean, you know, spending time with a language, you can eventually kind of open that back up to be able to duplicate, you know, sounds. It was real. I'm doing a terrible job at trying to say what, but it was a really interesting concept.
I don't know if it's because I just woke up, but I'm not sure I caught what you said there. How does your brain like switch off
Yeah,
hearing sound?
I don't remember exactly what the point of it was or how he came about it. I just know that he said something to the effect of like basically once you're say I'm again I don't know the exact I don't remember, but it was like say you hit a year old and as you're starting to form sounds, like your brain already has the ability to process any of these sounds. It just depends on what you
Mm.
grow up. Like I know there's for example, I know a girl who she's from South Korea, but she was adopted at like 6 months old. So I mean, she talks English just like I'm talking right now. So it's not that you're born into this area. So like you're always born with the ability to make any of these sounds, but as your brain gets used to hearing sounds from your native language, it kind of shuts all that other off so it can concentrate in order to get you to where you can
Interesting.
speak. It was a very interesting idea. I'd like to research it more, honestly.
Yeah, I'll go watch that video. Thanks.
So let's see. I'll study. Lindie is so good at at these languages. That is true. The beauty of Oh, okay. You know, I don't. Have you ever spoke about Esperanto or your opinions on it? I don't know if you have.
In university, I was really interested in it. Our library had a ton of books, but I don't want to be that person who says conlines is a waste of time because that's not what I'm saying at all. I think it's beautiful and valid, but right now it's not a priority for me. So
Right.
I've never focused on just learning a few words more,
Yeah.
a few more words. That was totally Afrikaans. We say a few words more in
For,
Afrikaans, like
right.
grammar. Um, but I can understand enough Esperanto because of Spanish, English, and French to
Right.
kind of know what they're talking about. I've never really gotten into the community, but the community looks huge and strong and awesome. So
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. That's the last one of these I did was with a guy that I met through Esperanto that ended up living like 45 minutes away from me. But it's a very interesting community, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Did you buy the Genki books? And are they useful for Japanese? Because I bought it and it's coming tomorrow.
Me, no, actually, I've never used Genki. I know there are a lot of mixed reviews on it. I used Japanese for busy people when I just started. That was the only thing that was available in South Africa, but I thought it was great.
Mhm.
And then Mina no Nihongo, my parents used that. I never really liked it. Um, the book layout looked really archaic to me, but I really, really, really love Japanese for busy people. I'm
Japanese.
sorry, I don't know what to say regarding
No,
Genki.
it's
Have you used them?
it's all good. I've used the first. Well, here's how I've used them actually, and this is a pro tip for you. Who is that? Alan? Alan's the guy that said this or whatever. So if you're gonna use Genki, I've done the first like 3 chapters, and the way that I did it was through. I have my book, but there's a channel here on YouTube called Tokini Andy, Tokini Andy Andy, and he live streams the lessons going through and teaching you the stuff from it, which makes it infinitely better in my opinion because like he can kind of give you tips and stuff so you're not just kind of guiding yourself through
Right.
which textbooks are kind of something I'm just newly getting into kind of like you know I got rid of all the applications on my phone all the little things that were I thought keeping me from stuff because you know I would log in and I'd be like oh man there's a flag I haven't tried that in a long time or you know
Oh, I did that last night at 2 a.m. Mondly
yeah.
updated their languages, and I was like, let's get Tagalog, let's get Urdu.
Yeah, yeah. I had to get rid because I mean, you know, and I'm sure that you have seen just on my social post, and even since the interview we did for your channel, how things have changed. But like, I had to get rid of like any of the distractions, and that's all it was. Like, I think if you have a mind where you can not be distracted, it's good. But I'm way too distracted. So textbooks are something I'm just getting into because if I pop open a Japanese textbook, it's not going to be like, "Hey, guess what? Vietnamese totally exists and you should try it out." So,
That's true. Yeah.
let's see. Interesting. I am able to at least fool Mexican Spanish speakers that I am South American with my Spanish accent. Yeah, I definitely think that that's possible for
Yeah.
sure.
This same person said that there will always be some indicators of a non-native accent. I've also figured that the ears of the listener are very different. There are people who can hear your accent like that and be like, I can hear you're good, but you're not native.
Mm,
And there are other people who just don't hear that. Their ears, as a native speaker, are just not attuned into picking up very, very, very slight nuances of
yeah.
pronunciation.
I think if you are a language learner, you would have a better ability to pick
Totally.
that out.
Yes.
Yeah, because you know, you see these videos of like all the stuff with the VR chat now, and people going in and being like, "Oh, I thought you were native," and but it's
Yeah.
also probably not trained language learners, and it's not at face value. It's over the internet. Like, there's probably a whole lot of things going into that.
Yeah. I was chatting online. I'm not going to say what video chat, but it's what we always used to go on as teenagers to like check out who's around the world and like practice languages with them. And I got matched with this guy who was speaking, but obviously he was hiding his face.
Hmm.
And I could hear that he has a Chinese accent when speaking English, but he was trying to fool people that he was Korean. And he spoke Korean, but I could just pick up his accent is not natural Korean. And I was like, come on, don't fool with me. And I was
Whoa.
speaking Korean to him and I was saying in Korean, I'm like, no man, you're Chinese. I can hear your Chinese inflection. Not trying to be rude, but
Yeah.
just the fact that I can hear you are a native Chinese speaker.
Right.
And after a while, he stopped trying to fool me and he was like, wow, you are the only person on here who could pick up that I was not native Korean. That must be because I'm a language learner and I'm used to the sound. So
Right.
definitely there will be people who can call you out and say, oh, you're not native. But I don't see anything wrong with that. Like if you're able to communicate in the language, fine.
Yeah.
Having a good accent helps you sound more fluent, but the point of language learning is communication. If you're
Communication.
able to communicate, fantastic.
Yep. And I'll always go back to the Benny Lewis thing. You know, if you're speaking Spanish and you don't know the verb conjugations, but you say, you know, no ahora pasado comer. Okay, not today, yesterday to eat. Okay, you ate yesterday. Like, you can get your point across. It might sound brutal, but you can absolutely get it across.
Yeah.
I do think the idea of sounding like a native can become a distraction to your learning, because I think if you
Mm.
set, like, for example, if you are just starting a language that you've never spoken, you're like, I want to sound like a native, you've already set an insanely high goal. So
That's
like, maybe look for that towards, you know, down the road sometime.
That's true. That's true. I think there's a difference between telling yourself, I need to sound like a native, and telling yourself, I'm going to spend some time getting used to the sound so I can sound as natural as I possibly can, not force
Yeah.
myself outside of something that I cannot do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I try before I'm learning a language to listen to it as much as possible. And I find that the more I hear a language, the more naturally it comes out, regardless of my level. So before I sit down and study a language, I'll
Mhm.
try and just watch a show or watch someone's interview on YouTube in a language. That really
Yeah.
helps just get my mind in a different, get my brain in a different language mindset.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing right now. I mean, I've spent since April 1st. I've watched over. Well, I've listened to almost 100 hours, like, passively of Japanese, but
Crazy.
I've been watching TV shows, and I've watched, like, I'm talking actively watched, no subtitles, just listening and watching, to almost 30 hours, and just being able to, I've picked up a couple of things just specifically through, but, you know,
Yeah.
just being able to hear it and see it. And I think that's the thing. You know, people want to learn these textbooks and stuff, and I'm not against them. I think they're perfectly fine, but you have to listen and at least a little bit, because once you get out there, man, these sentences aren't going to be like these textbooks.
Yeah,
Like,
and you're not gonna have subtitles in real life.
yeah, you've got to get
Uh,
used to the way way it sounds.
I think people underestimate the power of listening and watching stuff. Because sometimes you'll have a word that's just at the back of your mind and all it needs is to just show itself in a TV show and have someone say it like 5 times throughout
Mhm.
the show for you to have memorized it. But if
Yep.
you don't watch or listen to these things, you're not going to touch that word again. So that happened with my French yesterday. I was watching a show and they were talking about beau gosse, which is like a French word for like handsome guys or hot guys. It was some kind of French reality dating show.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my goodness, I remember this word from like 10 years ago in high school. And I would never use this word, but just because they kept saying it, I was like, okay, now it is solidified in my memory,
Yeah,
hopefully.
absolutely. And I mean, that's the way it works. You know, it's once hearing it a certain amount of times in context can kind of solidify what it means.
Mm.
Okay, Valeria says, oh, okay, oh, this is actually going back to the brain. It's that your brain decides what sounds are most relevant to understanding the people around you and groups similar sounds together to mean the same singular sound. That makes sense. Like,
Mm.
it's kind of it's trying to make you more efficient at communication, I guess.
And I think it's part of assimilation as well. You want to sound like the group, you adjust your pronunciation according to who you're talking to. I
Yeah.
find that when I'm speaking English to South African English people, I just completely switch back into a South African accent. I think it's psychologically also a part of us that wants to fit within a group, and we try and adapt our accent based on that.
Yeah. Well, you probably do that, or I do that in English. Like if I'm depending on who I'm speaking to, sometimes I will stop and be like, I'm saying like I have recognized it that it's my speech is just a little bit different than what it would normally be depending on who I'm talking to. Like so it
Yeah.
fluctuates. Yeah, absolutely. Luca the Polyglot is near native in English, but he has some quirks with his speech that gives away he's not a native. I've said that a long time. I think Luca's fantastic,
Yeah.
but sometimes I think he talks in circles almost to show that he can talk, which makes him sound a little funny.
That's interesting as a I don't know what the good word would be to I wouldn't say a coping mechanism, but as a way around if you have a like let's say you have an accent that's not very native, a way around that would be to try and prove you are native by using a lot of fancy words.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's very effective. And I don't think anyone is out here blaming or judging or laughing at anyone who has a bad accent. Here in the language community, we're generally all very supportive of each other, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
okay if your accent is not perfect. There's no need to try and um, prove yourself otherwise.
Yeah. The only people complaining about people's accents are people who don't speak other languages.
That's true. Or
Yeah.
people who are struggling with their own accent and trying to feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
That's a horrible thing to do. Don't do that.
Yeah, like especially being American and just from the United States, like hearing how people react to foreigners here sometimes is,
Oh no.
and I mean, we're a largely monolingual country, so. Uh,
Well,
Emily says, I'm a Spanish speaker and I can tell you Luca Lampriello speaks like a Spanish person. Yeah, I mean, in no way, shape, or form am I saying he doesn't sound incredible. It's just there are some weird things. Being a native English speaker, there are just a couple of weird things that he does. He speaks great. He probably
but
speaks at a higher level than me, but
but then again, he's Italian, right? So
yeah,
maybe Spanish is a lot closer to Italian than it would be to English.
yeah,
Or he's been learning Spanish longer than English. That could also be why.
yeah. I had to read study. I had to read study after study of applied linguistics studies when I was getting my master's degree under Van Patten. I don't know what that means. Do you think? Do you think the speak for native? Do you think the speak for native speakers Spanish and Portuguese is most easy speak Japanese for similarity? What?
I think he means do native speakers of Spanish and Portuguese, are they able to speak Japanese
Ah,
easier than English, for
okay,
example?
gotcha,
Because
gotcha.
of the sounds of the language. I've heard that being said that Portuguese speakers find it easier to learn Japanese than English speakers do. And I've also heard that Korean people learn English better from South African English teachers than they do from American English teachers because apparently South African English has easier sounds for Korean people to understand. I
I,
haven't done enough research on that, but what's your opinion?
I could see that because I know that just in my dabble of South African, there are some sounds that are um, Korean has some of those like hard sounds that South African
Mhm.
does, like not hard like hard to pronounce, but like the like that kind of.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like I don't know if that would maybe kind of make it easier or not because I know that um, it's hard for me to wrap my head around Korean sounds sometimes.
Mhm.
Like it's especially when I see the same character and it's like oh, and I'm like oh okay it's oh, and they're like no not oh, and I'm like
Yeah, that one took me two
what?
years to get. But as for Portuguese, I don't speak Portuguese and I'm not sure, but I've heard that it's very close to Japanese. And I know there's a big Japanese community in Portugal, I mean in Brazil, and a big Brazilian Japanese community in Japan.
Yeah, I'll have to ask old Maria from the last not last episode 2 episodes ago because she's native Portuguese.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that goes with all languages is with um, the similarity of it. That's interesting, man. I would love to know that now because I could see Portuguese. I mean, Portuguese has like a very. I've always said it's drunk Spanish, and it's just like they kind of just just flows and stuff. I don't know. I could see that. I could see that happening. So, um, what what so after you finish your Korean stuff, do you have any, like, what's your goal? Are you going to continue on to try to take higher level tests, or are you going to, like, what's your plan after that?
I think if I want to work in Korea later, I would definitely need to prove that I can communicate proficiently, and the test would be the way to prove that. But
Right.
right now, for the next few years, I hope I don't have chocolate on my face. For the next few years, I'm going to be based in Singapore, so it's not a priority right now. I would still like to achieve my language goals of the year, so I pinned that to Twitter and I made a YouTube video about that. It kind of fluctuates. My goals kind of change throughout the year, but in general, the list of languages I want to improve, I will still be tackling them. So right now, I kind of think the language exam will be postponed. So I'm taking a bit of a break from Korean. I feel really bad, but I've been focusing on Vietnamese, Tagalog, and French.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I'll play around with my other languages for a while.
Yeah, well, I've said it a million times, man, and I know that any regular, like, listen to every podcast, probably tired of hearing me speak about it, but there is no better culture to learn in terms of the people wanting to help you than Vietnamese. Like,
Oh yeah,
it
yeah.
is, like, because that's the thing. Like, I've noticed, like, for example, here in America, if you go and speak Spanish, it's almost such commonplace that no one really cares, right? There's not this, oh, you want to learn my language. It's kind of just like whatever. I've
Mm.
went into Chinese restaurants before and been like, hey, I'm trying to learn Chinese, and they're always just kind of like, okay. But
Mm.
the moment that I was like, I might learn some Vietnamese, like, my inbox was exploding with people being like, I'll totally help you. I will help you. Let me help you.
Yeah, they're so generous. It's really true. And I feel bad sometimes because I always get messages on Instagram from sometimes Spanish speakers, sometimes a lot of Portuguese people. I'm not learning Portuguese, but I always get it.
Mhm.
And a lot of Vietnamese people saying they'll help me. And I can't reply to everything. And
Right.
I really appreciate it. But also, I can't remember who's messaging me. Like, if I need help, I don't know who to be like, okay, let me find this person who texted me 5 months ago and ask them a question. I would rather just post it publicly on my story or
Yeah.
post on Twitter for help. So I really appreciate people saying they'll help me, but it's just impossible to keep up. But it's very generous, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Emily says, which do you think? Yeah, what do you think are the keys to learning a language? Yeah, look, that's it. I'll take it a step further. What do you think the most important thing is? Like, what is, like, to you? What is the biggest thing maybe that people would miss out on doing, or like, what to you? What is your biggest thing? Like, you feel like that's your biggest thing in terms of learning a language. Like, what is your secret
Mm,
thing or whatever?
in terms of technique or mindset?
Well, that's a valid question too, because I think mindset honestly may be a bigger thing than like getting your mind to think that you can. That may be actually be the biggest thing.
Yeah, a lot of people are caught up by watching people speak a foreign language and then feeling discouraged, thinking I'm never going to get to that level. But what you don't see behind the scenes is how much time and effort and stress that person has had to reach that level. We only see results, and we're so used to instant gratification
Yeah.
online that we want to apply that thinking to language learning and saying, okay, well, I just need to learn 500 words a day and I'll be fluent. That is
Yeah.
impossible, man.
Right.
So many words in Afrikaans. So it takes a very long time. So I think, first of all, try not to have that kind of mindset to think that it's super easy, super quick, but don't let that discourage you. Also, constant exposure to the language. It doesn't help if you just study a little bit on a weekend and then don't do anything in the language
Yeah.
in the week. So try and transform your daily life into the other language.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think, of course, I'm not really one to speak because it's not like I'm great at anything. So, but I do have, like, maybe I have the ideas. It's just hard for me to put into uh, work for myself. But I agree with watching people can make you really upset. But there's also a thing that I had never had really even heard of being discussed until the last few months, and it's called the Fluency Illusion, which is where you don't speak that language, so that
Yeah.
person obviously sounds incredible.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's true.
So they may literally be saying something that they wrote that's just like an hey, how are you? You know, like if I went out, if no one, if I went to someone who didn't speak French and I dropped an enchanté, they may think that
Yeah.
I'm the greatest French speaker on the planet. But
Yeah.
that's total nonsense.
Yeah. We
So,
shouldn't get distracted by that.
let's see. So, all right, some people say Italian is closer to Spanish than Portuguese, but I understand better Portuguese than Italian. Yeah, Italian and Portuguese and Spanish sound, excluding the slurred sounds, almost the same. My question ended up being confused. Despite the differences, it is much easier to pronounce Japanese words, watashi, for example, than English words like lieutenant for Portuguese speaker. Oh, they're saying that the words are easier to speak. Japanese pronunciation is not bad at all. Like, it's pretty straightforward, I think. I read a long time ago there was only like 109 different sounds that Japanese can even make, as to where English is like 300 some.
Crazy, yeah. I think, isn't this word pronounced lieutenant? So it has an F even though it's not written with an F.
No, it's
That might be like, those are those like hidden. Oh, that could be the American pronunciation actually. Yeah,
yeah,
British lieutenant. But maybe those like hidden sounds that you can't see, that's definitely tricky.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. There's always memes that go around where they take different words, like for example, enough is ENOUGH. So they'll take the GH from enough to make the F,
Oh,
and spell.
the fish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I've seen it.
yeah. It's English is that. I feel bad for anybody learning English. I feel bad for my son learning English as a native language. Like, it's so brutal.
English.
Hey guys, Kyle says, just tuning in and heard Lindie talking about Vietnamese. Which dialect is she studying? I had half a conversation with my girlfriend this evening in broken Vietnamese.
That's awesome that you can still have a conversation, even half of one. That's really cool. I am learning the Southern accent. Um, I have researched it a lot to try and decide which accent I should learn. Most of my friends are from the south of Vietnam, from Ho Chi Minh City, from Saigon.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really cool YouTube channel called Southern Vietnamese for Foreigners, SVFF. And they're just like spewing out content like that. And I'm like, well, if I have access to this huge resource of information in Southern Vietnamese, that will be really beneficial. However, I do find that most textbooks do teach the Northern accent. So I asked my friend, who's a second language Vietnamese learner, what she does. And she says you kind of just use what you can and you learn both, but try and be surrounded by the accent and people will correct you along the way.
Yeah, have you found a lot of decent media and stuff for Vietnamese?
Pretty much just that YouTube channel, and then I use a textbook over here. It's written in Korean, so I find a lot of Korean resources are good. I also listen to a Korean podcast for learning Vietnamese. There's not a lot of great stuff in English, so I am learning it through Korean.
Sure. Yeah, I know there's a book series from French that has Vietnamese called
Oh yeah, I've
Asimil.
used it. Yes, I've actually
Yeah.
used that Vietnamese book, Asimi Vietnamien. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've always thought that, like, if you really wanted to speak a ton of languages, learn French first, because then
Yeah,
you can access all the. Because those books are incredible.
it's
I've
true.
used them.
It's true.
Have you used audio only language courses like Pimsleur? Did it work well for you? Does it work well for you?
Should I answer?
Yeah, you can.
I have not used Pimsleur. I have heard about it and I've listened to a few clips, but I think I am more interested in reading and writing and talking. I know audio and talking goes well together, but I need to see what I'm listening.
Mm.
However, I will use it in conjunction with another resource. I think audio is so good and I'm always listening to audio. It helps me form my sounds better and get used to the language. So if I'm using Pimsleur, for example, I would need still a textbook and an app for something else. So holistically, I think it fits well into your circle of resources.
Mm.
As the only resource ever, it depends on your goals. If you want to be able to read and write, you should probably learn that separately. If you're just focused on speaking, that's totally fine.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue that I have with Pimsleur, I think it's great. Like, I used it a little bit for Greek and Russian. Like, and the thing is, it hammers it in your head so much. I still remember, like, "Я немного понимаю по-русски." I speak a little bit of Russian. Like, I still, like, because it does hammer. My issue is that, and I know that this comes with the territory, right? You're obviously going to spend more of your time and resources in getting Spanish content than Greek content, but, like, a lot of languages will have 5 levels, which is, and they're 30 lessons a piece. So what is that, 150 lessons?
Yeah.
Versus, Greek will have like 30 lessons and that's it. Like, so it's,
Mhm.
but you know, I don't know. That, I mean, again, that comes with the territory, though. I know Steve Kaufman's talked about not having languages on link, and he's like, but I need to spend more of my resources on getting the languages that are there more content versus trying to attract 100
Yeah.
new users because of this language.
Mm.
So, I've been getting Lingo Deer this weekend. It's cool. Thanks for the recommendation. I don't know if you're talking to me or Lindie, you're welcome. If you're talking to me, you can still low key thank Lindie because I found Lingo Deer through Lindie. So that is that. Lindie is right that in British English we say lieutenant. Holy crap! Really?
Yeah, even though it's spelled lieutenant. Yeah, I always in my mind I read it as lieutenant, and my parents are like, "It's lieutenant." I'm like, "Okay, got it."
Whoa, that's
Yeah,
crazy. I've
I know.
never heard that before. It's hard to learn a language which doesn't have a lot of resources in the languages you speak. I mean, that's true. And that's what one cool thing about the internet, though. There's a lot more stuff now than there ever has been. Granted, some of it may be terrible, but you know, and I'm finding new sources all the time, like for stuff that'll teach new stuff. I mean, I know the big thing was Duolingo was terrible at Asian languages, and then here comes Lingo Deer, and now
Yeah,
So people are always designing stuff. It just may be a little harder to find, but I mean, it definitely
yeah.
makes things tough.
I think we're living in the best time now for language learning. Even when I was growing up, I'm going to give away my age now, but back in high school, there were barely any apps for language learning at all. Like an app for language learning was just not thought of. You could find some courses online, some textbooks, but apps apps themselves were only starting to come out actually
Right.
when I was in school.
Yeah.
I am old.
No, I graduated in 2005, and I was trying to think of when the first smartphone came out. Maybe 2003 or four. So I mean, it's
First
like,
iPhone came out in 2007 or 8. That was the first iPhone.
oh crap. Okay, so that was definitely before. Yeah, that makes sense because I didn't have a smartphone until after I graduated high school.
Yeah.
I still had like a flip phone.
Same. I only got a smartphone in uni.
Yeah. And I told you this on your the thing that we did for your channel, but my first exposure to learning languages was Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I think that's it is what it is, I guess. But at the time, I mean, of course they were the best. It was one of the only things out there. Like it wasn't a market like that's the other thing too. You have to be careful because language learning is a huge market now. People capitalize off of
Yeah.
spend $30 and I'll teach you this with the idea that you're probably not going to see it through anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's good or not.
Yeah. That's horrible.
I'm learning the South dialect too, and yes, SVFF is great. For beginners, where should they start learning Japanese?
Oh my goodness, that is such a broad question.
Yeah, I can tell. I mean, I'm not good in Japanese, so and I'm just kind of getting back. Like I'm kind of on this um, last chance for Japanese. Like this is literally the last time I'm ever gonna try to learn it. Like, and that's with changing. I've been studying Japanese the same way for 10 years, and I've not made any progress. So that's why I completely overhauled everything that I did. But I would say, just from my personal experience, and I again probably wouldn't listen to me because I'm 10 years in here, 11 years in now actually. I would start with hiragana for sure. Learn to write at least
Yeah.
hiragana first, and then I don't know.
Definitely don't rely on Nomaji. It's easy to buy textbooks that are like Nomaji version because it looks simple and you can like start reading right away. I don't think Japanese sounds can be represented accurately in Nomaji. Definitely learn
Yeah.
hiragana and katakana first and get a textbook that's written in that. Don't be too stressed about kanji. Learn that as you encounter it. Don't try and memorize the first 100 list of kanji. Just learn it in context. So I really recommend the book Japanese for Busy People because of how they introduce kanji throughout the lessons. It's
Hmm.
very systematic and simple. So don't stress about that. And just try and like immerse yourself as much as you can. Listen to it, watch shows in it. Even if you don't understand, as long as you're hearing and seeing the language a lot, it'll be good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big thing. Because Japanese, if I'm not mistaken, I think Japanese may be the fastest language in terms of words per minute spoken, and it's because of all the particles and the short little. I mean, no is a word. Like, there's so many short words, but like, you definitely listen to it because
Mm,
if you don't hear the sounds of it, it's going to be even harder.
yeah.
Do you ever feel inadequate in a language you are confident and fluent in when a difficult topic in that language comes out and you go and you're like, what? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, all the time. How do I deal with it? I go home and cry. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I just acknowledge the fact that I am not a native speaker. It is okay. So I've been learning Korean going on almost 10 years, and there are still topics that I'm like, hold on, whoa, whoa, I don't understand what you're saying. Slow down. And that's okay. I mean, people are not going to get angry. I can be frustrated with myself, but people are generally pretty receptive, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, let me help explain that to you. I try and just turn those negative emotions into a motivator for me to study harder and be like, okay, I need to up my game. Uh, Let me see how I can improve.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think, but it even goes to your native language, right? If I'm around, like for example, if I'm at work and they start speaking about political matters and stuff, I have no idea what they're talking about. Like I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not uninformed, but like I tend to stay away from that stuff. So they'll start speaking, and I'm just like,
Mm.
okay, I don't know what you're talking about. So like, definitely goes like that. Nick says I'm learning. All right, let's see. I recognize what is that
Taiwanese.
part word?
Taiwanese.
Taiwanese. Okay, I was the con. I think that's the kanji for part, and then that's like word or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
language.
We're still
Yeah.
still getting there. Um, I can only ask my Taiwanese friends or use resources in Mandarin. Uh,
That's true. There are definitely not a lot of resources for learning Taiwanese. I had to go to Taiwan to find those resources. Not that I'm learning them, but I never saw them elsewhere. So definitely learning it in Mandarin would be a lot more effective because
yeah.
resources just don't exist. Yeah.
If you need a channel for some stuff, Luke Truman, he learns Taiwanese, Chinese, type Taiwanese, and he has a lot of stuff on his channel. It's called Full Time Fluency, or just search for Luke Truman. He has a lot of stuff. Are the Genki books effective? Yeah, we touched on that. I would look up stuff. Textbooks, I mean, they hit people different ways. Workbook. Recently got back into Latin because I saw it was on Duolingo. Either of you studied any ancient languages, Latin, ancient Greek? I have not.
Me neither.
Yeah, I've never.
No.
Yeah, I've always thought it'd be cool to study Latin just because that's the basis for, I mean, so many things. I mean, even a lot of English words and stuff like that is derived from Latin. I thought it would be cool, but I never have. Which is really,
Yeah.
really strange for me to say I've not dabbled in a language. Maybe I should add it to my list.
Yeah, my dad has a Latin Bible, and when we sit in church, he kind of reads along in Latin. He's so weird. It's so fun. So I think if you're hearing it in context, like if you're hearing the sermon in English and you can follow in Latin, and you have a Romance language background, you can follow, but you wouldn't be able to like speak it at all.
Yeah. Question to Lindie: are Singaporeans good at Chinese? I know that Chinese is an official language there, but do they speak on a daily basis?
Oh my goodness, I can make an entire video on this. This is very complicated to talk about. So a lot of my generation and younger Chinese Singaporeans do not speak it, with the Chinese accent or proper grammar. They're always mixing in words from other languages. So it's quite a mishmash of cultures here. So you don't just have Chinese, you have Hokkien, you have Hakka, you have Hainanese. And sometimes when these people speak, they're mixing their dialect in Chinese.
Hmm.
The accent, the Singaporean Mandarin Chinese accent, is very different from mainland and Taiwanese accent. Some other Chinese speaking countries would say that Singaporean Chinese is lazy or just very different. I mean, they can still communicate, but I would say Chinese is often mixed with other dialects as well as English with the younger generation. Older generations, they would actually speak more dialects than Mandarin Chinese.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, we use it at the office sometimes. If I were to start talking in Chinese, no one would, be like, "Whoa, stop! What are you doing?" I mean, maybe because I'm a random white person, but
Right. Right.
it's pretty normal to code switch a lot. Yeah.
That's interesting. I remember. I don't know if it's the same exact thing, but I know that you made the video a long time ago on Slinglish or
Yeah.
Singlish.
Yeah. 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 Singlish is mixed with spoken Mandarin Chinese as well. It's so
That's
cool.
uh, Lindy. Do you think Korean is harder than Japanese? And between Japanese and Chinese, which one do you consider is harder?
I actually have a video on that. It's called Learning Korean, Japanese, and Chinese at the Same Time. So you can check out that video. I go into a lot more detail. Um, Actually, it's very hard to answer this question because it depends on your background. So if you are a native Japanese speaker, obviously Korean is going to be easier than Chinese. If you're a native Chinese speaker, both might be equally difficult. Um, it's so impossible to say which language is harder. I think Jonathan, you can agree.
Oh yeah,
Um, Depends on how much time you're putting into the language, how much you've been exposed to it, how many resources you're committing your time to. It's impossible to say
yeah,
X is harder than Y.
yeah. And I think ultimately too, a lot of it can break down to if there's even a slight bit more of like something attached to that language, it'll be easier just because of that. Like whether it's an emotional tie or like just because
Mm,
you like it more, right? Like I'm way more inclined to learn Japanese or Korean than I am uh, Russian, just because of my interest in Eastern Asian culture in terms of that stuff. There's more of a tie there, so that's going to be easier for me anyway, just because it's going to be easier to stick to. Great.
right, right. It's also a mindset thing. Yeah. If you have that reason to learn, you're going to put more time in, and it's going to appear easier because you want it to be good. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're speaking in a foreign language, do you pay more attention to grammar or fluency? I find often that I make a lot of grammatical mistakes because I want to sound more fluent. Mm,
Simple answer from me, I tend to focus on grammar primarily when I study. I don't do any drills to improve my pronunciation. That comes naturally from exposing myself to language over time.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've had conversations in languages, but I don't know if I'm of caliber to say just because my languages are so bad. So I would say I concentrate. I don't even know. I wouldn't know how to answer it because I don't know enough of anything, I think, to be able to say that I concentrate on anything. I've never been mistaken as someone who can fluently speak a language. That's what I'll say.
You'll get there.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully so. Well, I'm 18 days into kind of like completely reevaluating how I study and stuff, and it's going way smoother. So
Nice,
we'll
nice.
cross my fingers, I guess. We'll see. Lindy, is motivation the key to learning multiple languages at once?
I would not say it is like the key. Like learning multiple languages does not equal having motivation. It's a combination of different factors. You need to have time, proper resources, proper exposure to the language, a plan if you're going to learn multiple languages at once. Um, Definitely motivation is a part of it, but it won't, just because you have motivation doesn't mean you'll be able to learn a lot of languages at once. Not going to name any names, but there's someone on YouTube who goes out there and he is super motivated and he's always talking to these people, but his languages are not the greatest. But he definitely has motivation. You can
Right,
tell that he's super into this, but his grammar is terrible. His pronunciation is all over the place. It's okay. It's okay. He's got motivation, but what is his goal? Maybe his goal is just to be motivated and talk to people. My goal is to, maybe sound accurate or have a natural pronunciation. Everyone's
right.
goal is different. So
Yeah,
motivation can be a good thing to apply if you have a specific goal. It might not fit to someone else's goal. For me, motivation is not necessarily what keeps me going in multiple languages. It's the connection to the language, wanting to understand a culture, wanting to talk to different people. It goes more than motivation.
yeah.
What do you think?
I think so too. I think honestly, one thing that's worked for me in terms more so than motivation, and again, I can only speak of the last 18 days, but is having fun with what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't feel like, and this is gonna sound so weird to say, but like I don't feel like I'm learning the last 18. I am learning, but it doesn't feel like I'm forcing 10, 15 vocabulary words down my throat a day or whatever. I'm just enjoying what I'm doing. Like I'm enjoying. I may not know what's happening exactly in these shows that I'm watching. I'm watching like between like Death Note and I watched Erase again. I'm watching Terrace House right now. Like, but I can get the gist of it from what's being shown, and then I can pick up vocabulary around the idea of context.
Yeah.
And that has been so much more enjoyable, and I guess that feeds into motivation because it's motivating me to continue. But I don't know
Yeah.
if it's necessarily that it's motivating me as much as I just don't feel like I'm having to do a chore.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
Maybe I was lazy and used the online converter. Okay, that's about. I would say focus on grammar. It's better to speak well and learn colloquial. There it is. As you go. I
Yeah,
mean,
everyone
yeah.
has different goals. Some people are super focused on getting their pronunciation right first. Other people just want to talk and don't care about grammar as long as they can get their point across. Everyone has different goals. There's really no right
Yeah.
or wrong answer here in language learning.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, if your goal is to learn a language and learn the utmost of like super respectful, you know, just absolute to the T grammar perfect, then do that. But if you want to just learn how to say a couple of things to your friends, whatever. I mean, yeah, it's definitely what your goal is.
Mm.
Okay, I'm actually excited for this question because I feel like we may have differing opinions on this. Your opinion on Heisig's remembering the kanji?
I haven't used it, so I don't think I have a very valid opinion. I have read up about it, and I have thought I should have used this. My method of learning kanji was all over the place when I started, and if I had known the radicals from the start, if I had focused on stroke order from the start, I would probably be able to remember kanji better.
Mm-hmm.
It is a method that I want to start using from now for kanji, so that's
Okay,
all.
I expected you to go the opposite way. That's what I'm currently using is
Yeah.
remembering the kanji. And it's like the thing is like I don't know, right? Like I don't know how to read them in terms of onyomi and kunyomi.
Yeah.
I understand that, but I was watching, for example, and I tweeted this out. I was watching a
Oh, I
video
saw.
on Animal Crossing the other day, and I knew what those symbols meant.
Because of what they look like and their
Yeah,
yeah, their radicals. Yeah,
right.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
And so I got the general gist of now I some of it was confusing, like for example the kanji for house was right beside of the kanji for tool, and so
Uh,
I was trying to think in my head what that would mean, like house tool, like or
kagu furniture.
furniture. Okay, see there it is. Okay, that makes sense. So but yeah, like I could recognize and I think that's awesome because really I was thinking about it too when you read. I don't know, like when you're reading, like for example, if I see Kyo now, which is Ima
Yeah,
and Ima, it's today and or
day. Yeah,
now day, but I don't
yeah,
recognize that as now day. I just read it as Kyo, which is very. I
yeah.
mean, so like
That's where you want to be.
so it's very very interesting. Another question for Lindy: what was your first impression of Indonesian? Was the grammar difficult or complicated to understand as an English speaker?
Um, I think Indonesian grammar is pretty simple. I'm definitely not advanced enough to be able to know a lot more about the grammar, but as an Afrikaans speaker, Indonesian and Afrikaans share a huge amount of vocabulary. That's what attracted me initially. Um, so far vocab has been pretty easy. Grammar, I would still need to learn a lot more to have a proper opinion on that. Yeah, I'm still really beginner.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't Indonesian, don't they do a thing where instead of having plurals, they just say the word twice?
In some cases, yeah. In a lot of cases, you do repeat the word, yeah.
That's amazing. Like, that sounds
Yeah.
really cool to me. How many languages is it possible to learn properly at the same time? I think that's individual based, really. But
Yeah.
what, I don't know. I can't speak on this because, like, I can't even learn one language at a time. So, like, struggling. So,
Jonathan, I was hoping you would answer this question so that I wouldn't have to, because this is so hard to answer. Everyone is different.
yeah.
I mean, for my dad, one language only. For me, a few. Because I'm able to split my mind, I enjoy it. Some people have to focus on one and then move on to another and then move on to another. That's okay. That way you could say that some of their languages are in maintenance mode as well. Like you learn one and then you focus on another, you stack it, but you're maintaining that other language. So technically you are learning a few at the same time. Some are just in maintenance mode.
Yeah.
I don't think it's very wise to learn 3, 4, 5 new languages at the same time. Definitely learn a few of them at least to an intermediate level before you move on.
Yeah. Yeah, I can, because once you kind of hit an intermediate level, from what I understand, anyway. Well, you know what? All right, so I'm really hard on myself. Part of that's kind of a joke, but like part of it is somewhat serious. But like Spanish, for example, like I guess at one point I was an intermediate speaker. When I hear Spanish, I still know a lot of what's going on. It may take me a minute before I would be able to even speak a coherent sentence, just to kind of get back into that mentality. But I can still understand what people are saying a lot of times. So like it's still there. But I also think if you left that from a beginner stage, I don't necessarily know if it would stay as much.
Yeah, gotcha.
What do you think about translation or not using translation? I think at the beginning is good, but for some concept, if you can't avoid it, it's better. I definitely agree with that, and I'll give you an example right now. I was watching Erased the other day on Netflix, and there was a sentence that came up, and I recognized some of it. So what the guy was saying was the book has changed, right? But the way that they say it in Japanese, if you translate it in terms of this specific sentence, was the book's contents have changed. But it's but it's translated as the book has changed because that's how we say it in English. So if you would translate it, I mean, it's not going to be spoken the same way. So that was a weird time when I was like, okay, cool. So I got it. So hon no nayo, like book contents of books. So okay, cool. Like, so that's where translation can get you in trouble, because if you try to translate word for word, you're not going to make it.
Yeah, once you reach an intermediate level in a language, I think it's a good idea to use a single language dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
So look up, for example, Japanese words using a Japanese dictionary. And I mean, if you're stuck during the dictionary, you can look up some explanation words in English, but definitely try and do as much as you can in a language. I'll actually show you my Korean notebook. I try not to use English in my notes as much as possible at all. So even though the textbook I'm using has English translations, I avoid writing that as much as possible. So my explanation is even in Korean. And it's so easy to just default back and say, let me, add some English notes here, but I'm forcing myself to think in Korean. So try. It takes a while, but try not to use another language, because the language structure is different, the sentence structure, the order. It's just gonna not be very beneficial down the line.
No, for sure. And that's the thing too. Like, well, the other kind of like bonus with doing that is you're getting practice at other things that you know by writing out the explanation. So it's like bonus practice for things like words and concepts that you know.
Yeah, agree.
What do you think about how some people overthink language learning? All you have to do is get a beginner grammar guidebook, read and listen to native material, and you'll get pretty good. I mean, I think overthinking is just part of human nature, but I also think that there are so many books that we second guess what we should get, and then we start getting all of them, and then we spend a year reading nothing but beginner textbooks because we have 30 beginner textbooks.
Yeah, I agree to some extent with Rob. And I agree with you, Jonathan, as well. I think this stems from a place of wanting to be sure you have the proper method and the proper technique before you get started. But that changes over years. The way I learned Korean when I started is completely different from how I'm learning it now. And it's okay to fluctuate. I don't think we should be so dead set on making a specific plan and focusing all our resources on methods when we could actually just be, just try and study already.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've always wanted to do it. I might do this as like an April Fool's video. Like maybe if my channel gets like, even if it doesn't get bigger, I might do it next year. But like I've always thought about making a video, and it's like, it's going to be just like 10 seconds long, and the title will be like the video you have to watch in order to learn any language. And it's going to be like, hey guys, welcome. Stop watching videos, go study.
Yeah, I've thought about that too. Yeah.
Like.
And I don't mean to be mean, because I understand people are asking this from a legit place of wondering and concern when they say, like, how do you learn a language? That is such a hard question to answer because everyone's different. And Honestly, you just need to get started. You don't need to know how to learn a language. You just actually need to start. Wherever you start is a good start enough for
Yeah,
me.
it's more than nothing. Well, the thing about that question of how do you learn a language is it's usually coming from people who understand that like with the way that and I've talked to a ton of teachers on this show. I talked to Polyglot Files who teaches, and I've talked to I mean almost not almost everybody, but a lot of people who I've taught on. Maria is a teacher. But I know a lot of people are really anti learning in classrooms because everybody doesn't learn the same, but then they'll get online and ask, how do you learn a language, thinking that everybody learns the same.
Yeah.
It's like a weird thing. Taking notes while studying, it helps me remember everything I learned in the future. I started taking notes recently, finally. I got a sweet pen somewhere. I tried to do
What
the.
pen?
I tried to do the. Let me see if I can find it real quick. No, I think it's. I must have put it with my other notebook, but I bought a pen because I wanted to do the multicolor thing, and so it's and I knew, so I have to take anything that makes me lazy out of it. So I took out multiple pens, and I got the one pen that has the four different colors. That
Nice.
way I can take notes.
Nice.
But taking notes is something. Writing stuff down has helped me tremendously. Like I learned a kanji the other day for I've told people this, and they're like, "That is strange." But like, I learned the kanji and how to say blood in Spanish or in Japanese, and it's
Yeah.
because I was watching a show, and the woman was like, I can't remember the exact phrase, but she was basically just like, it was like, "What is that blood?" She was like, and it was like very slangy. It was like "Nande chi or whatever." Like, but the
Yeah.
point is like I wrote it down, and that helped me, and I know the kanji for it now, and I know how to pronounce it, or I know the sound of it. So,
Yeah.
but
Writing that is great.
that's helped tremendously in terms of that. Which I still put English on there, but that's
That's fine. That's fine.
because yeah, I do want to make the quote unquote monolingual transition in terms of study, but that's definitely down the road for me. Like I'm not jumping the gun too far, and I think that's part of my problem too. And I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, and I don't know if you've done this or not. Have you ever kind of maybe jumped the gun on something, thinking that you're maybe further ahead than you are, and then that kind of
All
stunts
the
you?
time. Beginner resources bore me, and I don't want to read children's stories. My least favorite thing to do in learning a language is reading a book of children's stories.
Hmm.
I just don't want to do that. So then I look up like an article that I'm interested in, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know half of these words. And I try and push through, then I'm like, okay, let's be realistic. Just stop doing that.
Yeah,
So
it's hard. That's one thing I'm doing right now with Japanese is I said to myself at the beginning because I was like, cool, I'll get some like children's stuff, and I said, you know what? No, I'm not gonna watch content in Japanese that I wouldn't watch in English. And that way
mhm.
it keeps it fun, right? Because if I'm watching children's shows and I would normally not watch, now like if my son is awake and I'm like, oh, I could get a little extra immersion in and just like watch a children's show with him or something, it might be a little bit different. But if I'm sitting here at 11:30 at night and I'm like, all right, man, time to turn on The Cat in the Hat or something in Japanese, it's just not gonna. I don't think that would maintain that fun factor.
Mm. I have to get going soon, so
Okay,
maybe we can round it
wrap.
off.
Yeah, if anybody has any final questions or anything, feel free to toss them about. Um, hopefully, all right. I'll ask you this: you recently, or not recently, but you were you became a meme on the internet, and I know that you had talked about you identified more with Luca because you like the sounds. Was it Hungarian?
Yeah, and focusing on native pronunciation or accents. Yeah.
Yeah, where so you I know that you like it seems like Asian languages are big, but like in terms of like that Middle Eastern or kind of like I don't know, what is Hungarian? Is it Slavic? Is it like a mixture?
No, it's not Slavic. I'm not very good with language families. It is an isolate, but I can quickly Google that. It's at the tip of my tongue. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oh yeah, it's Uralic.
Okay, okay. I was just gonna say
Yeah.
what I don't remember. I feel like you have said it, and maybe I've just forgot. But like, what took you to? Oh, actually, now that I say that, I remember where you said that you started picking up Hungarian. But what was the because you said that you were talking to somebody, but like,
Yes,
what was the motivation outside? Like, was that just it?
definitely, definitely music. I listened to Hungarian music, and I was like, "This is so good. I love everything about this. The sound of the language is just stunning." And pretty much just for the sound, I was like, "I want to keep learning because I love." how it
Gotcha.
sounds.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's some Japanese that I can. Oh no, I don't recognize that symbol.
She's
Kunata kedomata. Yeah, kanji still. I those aren't 400 of the most known kanji, so I don't recognize those.
she's saying she's late, but she's happy that we're still live.
Ah, yes, yes. Well, we are wrapping it up, but thank you for joining for sure, though. There's a Brazilian polyglot who can speak 22 languages. His name is Gabriel Silva. You should bring him here. Oh, okay, gotcha. That was for me. Yeah, yeah. I know who Gabriel is. Love your. Valeria says, "Love your earrings and your teacup."
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And love your collection of wine glasses. Oh, and the illumination. That's my wife's. That's not mine. So,
Lovely.
but yeah, cool. So, well, Lindy, yeah, I will let you go. Like I said, I did want to be mindful of your time. Thank you for jumping on here. That was super, super fun.
It was really fun. Thank you to everyone for your interesting and insightful questions. You really got me thinking. I mean, I just woke up, so wow, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, cool. Hopefully everything will be good here shortly, and everybody can start getting back out and stuff. And maybe down the road in a month or so or two, if you have some time, we can jump. Because I'm going to continue doing these past quarantine. So
Yeah, and I am still editing our video. I'm sorry, editing and I have a love-hate relationship, so it's taking very long. But yeah, check out our video on my channel pretty soon, maybe next week.
yeah, yeah. I have Lindy's channel linked in the description, but I feel like everybody here probably knows your channel. But if you don't, her channel, if you're watching this after it's live or whatever, her channel is in the description. Cool. Well, Lindy, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate that tremendously. I do have another, for anybody watching, I do have another show tomorrow night, 9 p.m. with Valeria. So that will be on. So I'll be live again tomorrow night if you guys want to stop in and join for that. So thank you all
Thank
for
you.
watching.
Thank you, everybody.
And I will see you all in that next stream.